Hi everyone, I'm Alex with Wide Awake Travels. The next project on the bus is framing out the interior dividing walls between rooms. My suggestion is to avoid framing with 2x2s, 2x3s, 2x4s, because they just take up the space in the bus. The best is to save on space, is to use 3/4 inch good quality plywood and get a Craig jig, pocket hole jig, and just screw the plywood, the whole sheet of plywood, into the ceiling, into the wall, into the floor, and you'll create a thin 3/4 inch thin wall that'll serve your purpose for most things. Now there are situations where I cannot use just the plywood. And that is, for example, in the shower, where I want to put the shower valve in the wall. I need to have that thickness so I can hide it in there. You can buy one of those valves where the plumbing is on the outside of the wall. It's just not the look we're going to go for. So another situation where we're going to need to frame is for our bedroom here. Our bedroom needs to be framed out with at least 2x3s, because we're going to have a bed lift, and bed lift is going to use 4 of these track actuators, and I don't want these track actuators to be visible sitting on the outside of the plywood wall. I want them hidden in the wall, and only the mounting bracket basically sticking out. That's why we need to frame that, and he's gonna frame it. I think it's gonna probably give more support so it can handle the weight of the whole bed going up versus just the plywood. Perhaps the plywood would be enough, I don't know. I haven't tested it, but I know that the framing will for sure work and handle the weight. And we also have some light switches and stuff in the walls that need to be hidden, and I don't want to put an outside light switch and have a conduit going and be visible. It's just not the look we want. We want a hidden light switch, just like in a house, hidden wiring and all that. So there is some walls that I'm gonna have to frame with 2x3s, just so I can have those things satisfy those requirements of ours. Another thing is the bunk beds here. The bunk beds, I'm gonna build that framing and support for the bunk beds in the walls. That way I don't. It's like seamless, right? I don't have the legs of the bunk beds visible on the outside of the wall if I were to use a plywood wall. Now the place where I'm going to use plywood walls is going to be where our slide out pantry is. After the bathroom here, slide out pantry, I can put 2 sheets of plywood with pocket hole screws. I don't need to do the framing for that, and that's going to save us some space. But a lot of these other places, because I'm gonna be running a mini split evaporator, is gonna be in the middle of the bus. I need to run those lines hidden. I don't want them visible on the outside of the wall. They're gonna be hidden in the framing in the wall to go back to the condenser that's gonna be outside on the back of the bus above the door. So there's these situations when I need to do the framing because of the way we want it to look, or because of hiding things like these track actuators. First step I'm doing is marking where the stud's gonna be on the floor, right, the bottom plate. I put him 9 inches from the back wall is where it's gonna start. And I did the same thing on the other side, because the garage area is going to be only a shallow area there. Since I bought a lot of 2x4s a long time ago, and they've been sitting in the garage, and now I decided to use 2x3s for the framing, I'm going to need to cut them down. I don't want to go and buy 2x3s. And these are now nice and dry, so I'm just going to cut them down to the 2x3 size, which would be 2.5 inches wide instead of 3.5. here's what I've done. I got the stud cut so the longest part, you know, sits on top of here because I gotta cut it under the angle. So I kind of put a stud right here, and I kind of eyeballing it, and I drew the angle I need to cut this. There it is, flush, almost flush against the wall. All right, I got a second board cut, 89 inches. Did I go too small? Let's see. No, I just need to angle it a little bit. I'm gonna use the miter saw. I set it to like, what is this, 20 degrees. Bottom is at 10.5. And let's measure this guy. Okay, 10.5, almost close. Yeah, that's 10.5. And I know my wire goes over here. Therefore, if I put some screws there in the ceiling, it's not gonna damage the wire, because I put a little pencil mark where the wire is. Now the reason why I only put 10 inches and not like 16 or 24 on center, just 10 inches between the studs, it is because I'm gonna have the track actuator for the bed lift here, and if I move the stud too far away, then I would have to put it either on this side, but then I need to have a support up here to put a cross piece high enough so I can put the track actuator high enough. And I wouldn't have where to screw it in here. It would be harder to just do it in the ceiling. I would rather just have a square piece of 2x3 and I can just do it in the studs. So this way I put it here. The next one comes over here. I can have high up a cross piece where I can screw the mounts for the track actuator. I don't want the track actuator to be too close to the middle because I'm going to have another one on this side. So I want to keep them as far apart as possible to you know, distribute the weight load. But I can't put it too far out because then the ceiling is curved, the track actually going to be too low. So the bed is not going to be lifted above our heads. That's why the track actuator needs to be a little more towards the inside. All these things I have to keep in mind when I'm designing the framing. It's kind of tricky. The next stud needs to be 13 inches from the previous one, between, not on center, between them, because I have framing here. Right there, there is actually not just the ceiling board, there is actual wood framing behind it, and I want to screw that stud into that framing. So that'll structurally be stronger instead of doing it somewhere over here when there's no framing and then this screwing into just the 1/4 inch ceiling, which is too thin to hold it, you know, that much. So that's why, otherwise I would have put it maybe 24 inches on center. Now that I want to measure the height, I put it down on 13 inches and up at the top on 13 inches. So now I do know I need to move it for further 1.5 inches to this side because I'm on the highest point. That's gonna be 91 3/4 basically. Oh, I just realized that I didn't take into account the thickness for the bottom plate, which is 1.5 inches thick. Since I didn't take into account the thickness of the plate at the bottom, I'm gonna have to take 1.5 inches off from each of these stubs from the bottom. Alright, now I'm measuring how long the bottom plate should be. Alright, now I'm gonna test fit it here, see if it fits. Okay,
There's a little gap. And what I'm doing now is I'm lining up, putting them on the floor and lining up the bottom plate, and then I'm going to start screwing these guys in one by one. So I got these 3-inch construction screws. I had that laying around, number 10. That will do. That'll be 1.5 inch into the wood, into the studs. Alright, here's what I've done. I got a scrap piece of wood, cut it 86 inches long, same as the bottom plate, and I screwed it into the top side over here. So basically, just to support temporarily this frame. Because I've only put the studs that are on each end, not the ones in between them. And now I'm lifting this up. Now the tricky part is here. I have to drill some holes and run these wires through them so I can have the stud resting right there. And I think I'm not going to be installing all the studs on the floor first. I'm going to set this up, screw it in, and then I'll start adding the studs there. Because I'm going to have this as the backing. I got both sides the cables in, so I got my laser level over here. It projects lines in all 3 dimensions, and I had turned off the self level. That way it's gonna only level based on the floor. I don't need to have the bus level on the ground because I want it 90 degrees based off of the floor. So I've lined up my laser level so the edge is on the stud, because the stud is already distanced from the edge of the plywood here, 9 inches to here. So I know the bottom is the proper distance, but the top is not. But it projected this line 90 degrees from the floor, and I know where I need to move these boards. I guess my floor is like not perfectly smooth, so the laser level is not giving me 90 degrees. Because when I took this square and I'm putting it here, and it's showing me perfectly 90 degrees. But the laser is like showing me off like 1/2 inch up here. So looks like I'm just gonna stick to the old school method. Nine. Alright. I'm not gonna screw anything here because I'm gonna have to cut this off to put the water tank there. I'm gonna frame around that. Alright. And then I can add a few more screws there. I'm taking this board that was holding them together, taking it off. 'cause I gotta pull these. These are kind of separated too much from the wall because that board was a little too short, so it was pulling them. Let's check then if it's 90 degrees here. It's not. So I gotta get this unscrewed here. Almost. That's better. I've added this 2x4 at the bottom to serve as a stopper, so all the studs in between can be parallel to each other, can be flush. And then I added a small one up there as well, just a scrap piece that I had. So when I'm putting these studs like this, that can serve as a stopper. So they're all flush. What I have here is the Craig jig for pocket holes. It's a great tool to get. And it helps me drill the holes in these studs. Basically the stud goes like this. I already set it to 1.5 inch thickness because that's what the thickness is of 2x4s. And you can clamp it down like this, and then when you put it on this in a drill or your impact driver, it drills holes under the angle here. So you have these special screws. I put it in, it sets to 1.5 inches, but I'm gonna move it because I'm gonna use these two holes, not the outside one. That's for 2x4. I'm gonna like this. I'm trying to kind of get them in the center so these two holes are centered. I'm gonna tighten that. Get my impact driver. This is the drill that came with it, drill bit, and that's it. Now when we let it go, we have these two holes, so when you put your screws in, they go under the angle in the bottom board. Okay, so the Craig jig comes with this long bit for the screwdriver, for the screws. So I'm gonna come over here. I have already marked where it goes on the bottom. And I come in here. That's looking good. Now I have to add some cross pieces. This is the progress. I got two of the studs in the middle added. What I'm gonna do now is put the third one. I've marked my distance here and X, that's where the stud is going to be on that side of the line. So I just realized why these 2.5-inch Craig pocket hole screws were not going deep. It's because I didn't set the right depth on the drill bit itself. It was on 3/4. I should have switched it to a 1.5, which is the thickness of the 2x3s. Once I did that, the screws go like this deep. So I've decided to keep the drill bit on 3/4 inch setting, set the clamp to 1.5 inch, and use these construction 3-inch long screws for framing, because it's gonna hold better than trying to set the setting to 1.5 inch on the drill bit and use the 2.5-inch long Craig jig screws. This is gonna be better. Checking here, and I see it needs to go a little bit to the right.
So I'm going to come over here. A little hammering there.
Just so you hold. Here it is. All the vertical pieces are in place. So now it's time to put these cross pieces, horizontal pieces, to add more support. So I've marked my height from the bottom plate here, as well as on the other side, so I know how to line up the board, the stud to be, this cross piece to be, you know, square. Alright, so I flipped it so it's up like this. I screwed it in, it's solid, 90 degrees. So when the water heater is like square, comes in here, it's gonna rest on this. Here's the shot from far. I haven't added any in this one and this one, because that's where the track actuators for the bed lift are gonna go, and I need to do that later on once I have the bed frame and all the mounting, so because I need to make them the right heights. What I'm working on now is the longest wall in the Skoolie, the wall that is separating our bedroom from the bathroom and also the hallway here. That's this long one. I had to buy a 12-foot long 2x4, and I cut it down to be 2x3, and it's now like about 10.5 feet long, because I want to make it out of one piece of framing, and then I can cut the rest of the stuff off that I don't need if I need to cut something, like entrance to the door if I need to cut that. It's better for me to make that wall out of one stud at the bottom, one at the top, and then just put the vertical studs, instead of trying to make two separate walls and kind of connect them together. I think this will be more straight this way. Now the key here is making it be square with the floor, square with the other walls, ceiling, all that, because I have to put this board in first, put the one in the ceiling, and they need to be square with each other, you know, 90 degrees, I mean, with the floor and the walls. And then once I start adding the vertical pieces, it's gonna be easier for those. The key is getting these two boards in the right positions. And I know that my bathroom is going to be 24 inches wide, so I need to do 24 inches from the wall there, but I also need to add 1/2 inch thickness for the final walls, right? I'm gonna have probably, you know, the same shiplap as here, that's 1/2 inch, and then the bathroom, the shower, is gonna have 1/2 inch thick curdy board. So I need to take that into account. So basically I need to measure 24.5 inches from the wall on both ends and screw this bottom plate into the subfloor. 24.5. There we go. Now I'm on the other end. Okay, now I gotta keep measuring 24 inches because this stud bottom plate is a little warped. I'm gonna need to force bend it so it's 24 everywhere. There we go. Now good thing is that there is a stud on the floor here because I have framed my floors and put spray foam insulation. So now I'm hitting that stud with this screw. That's gonna hold it even more. If I did everything right, this should be 90 degrees. And it is. I was thinking, what's the easiest method for me to make sure that the top plate is square? And I've decided to first put this first vertical piece here. Then I can use the 3-4-5 rule. 3-4-5 rule says when you measure 3 feet from at the bottom to here, you mark it. 4 feet from the bottom up, then the diagonal should be 5 feet. If it's not 5 feet, then it's not square with the floor. So I'm going to square that first vertical piece that way, and then from then on I'm going to know where I need to put the top plate. So what I'm doing here is I'm screwing this one screw at the bottom. And now I can use it I can move this and get it square with a 3-4-5 rule, and it's not gonna fall down. Now I'm measuring 3 feet. From the stud. And here I'm gonna measure 4 feet. So I put in a screw at the 4 feet mark on the vertical stud, and I'm gonna get my measuring tape there. So I'm adjusting the stud until the 5 feet mark is right at the mark where I marked the 3 feet on the floor. And then I press it, and I'm getting this clamp to temporarily hold the piece. Okay, now it's holding it, so there should be 5 feet when I check again. Okay, I'm gonna add a few more screws, but that should be now square with the floor. I got an actual square. I'm gonna see if this is square with the floor. It's fairly close. On this side it shows it's square. So maybe this board is a little warped, but it's close enough. I'm gonna put the top plate and use one of these third-hand pole holders to hold the top plate, and then I'm gonna screw a vertical stud. I have one wire coming from the ceiling and it's going into that top plate, so I had to drill a hole. And I'm running it through now. Okay, holding it. I gotta hammer it this way. I'm gonna put one screw here just to anchor it. So I've decided to do the next stud over here, to do that one next, and then move along till I do the end one. And I've marked here where the next stud will be, and I'm taking into consideration this dividing wall that's dividing this shower here from the area where the water tank will be on the left here, because I'm putting that in theirs, and when the other wall comes in here, it's going to overlap with this stud, and I can screw it into that stud. I drilled some pocket holes there on both ends, and now I'm just gonna jam it in, put it in place here. Now I mark here the same distance from this stud up here as it is down there. So it should be square as long as that's square, you know, so that's the trick. You know, once you start, if you make one wall square, you can get other ones square off of it. Let's see, is this gonna be square? No, it's gonna go more to the right. I'm gonna do this. That's pretty good. I bought a longer T25 bit to work with these construction screws, 3-inch construction screws. I'm checking the top side. That's pretty good. Now we'll screw that stud into the top plate. And the top plate is still not anchored anywhere into the ceiling except on the very end on the left. I got these 4 vertical studs installed. Just finished this last one. The top plate is still not screwed into the ceiling because now I need to square the whole wall with the floor this way. This way it's 90 degrees in this angle. Alright, I'm gonna do the 3-4-5 method. And if I take this square, now the floor's got roughness over it. It's not perfectly flat probably. Okay, so that's pretty good. You know, I have a one stud behind the ceiling that go this way, I think. I know I put a stud there. It should be, I have to angle the screw this way to get to that stud. Over here, I've added 2 more studs where the shower is gonna be, because the curdy board requires at most 16 inches on center. And make sure that the studs are flush with each other, because if they aren't, you're gonna have a problem with the curdy board. It needs to be flush. I've added 2 horizontal cross pieces here. I'm not gonna add one here yet because that's where the track actuator is gonna go, and I need to figure out the distance and all that, like where it's gonna be, because it's gonna have cross pieces for support. I'm building now this wall that divides our bedroom from the rest of the bus. I had to cut 2 notches for these wires, and I screwed the bottom one only, and then I just have to square it with the floor, and continue working on a few more studs here. There's gonna be a track actuator for the bed lift here as well, and this wall will also be supporting the bunk beds. I'm not gonna have a separate legs for the bunk beds. I'll build it into the wall so I save on space. I finished installing a few more studs. This one is put in this location because I have a stud in the ceiling that goes this way, so I wanted to screw it into it. And then this will be the door entrance here for our bedroom. And this stud is screwed into this one under the angle, as well as screwed at the top into that top plate. And then at the bottom, actually I'm gonna end up cutting this down, probably cutting this off, because that's the door. I don't need that stud there, so I'm gonna cut it off here and then over here at a later time. I had to add a stud here, so I have something for the final wall to screw into. So I had to add that whole stud there. That's how it looks. This is gonna be the bunk bed over here, so they're gonna end right here. So we're gonna have about 2 feet of hallway space, and the bunk beds are gonna be like 32 inches or so deep.
So I just realized over here where there is a more of a curve in the corners, I'm gonna need to put some cross pieces all the way at the top, so I have something to screw my final walls into. Because if the final wall, for example, like ends like this here, and then I have this gap, I have nothing to screw this left side into.
There it is.
For this corner one, I'm actually gonna cut a piece of 2x4 like this to follow the curve. So I'm just placing it like over here, and then I'm gonna do this, start from the middle here, and then go back over here. Of course you can use a compass for this too.
Alright, here's what I'm working on now. That area right there is where the freshwater tank is gonna be. And I wanna make it so I can relatively easily remove the tank if something happens to it. I don't want to put it in and build all the framing around it and everything and make it really hard to remove it. So I made this frame, a mock-up frame the same size as the water tank, and trying to see how far I can push it like this, and this is as far as it can go. So basically my problem is these studs right here. They're blocking it from going to the left. So what I'm gonna do, I did some thinking here. I'm gonna remove this cross piece, and then I'm gonna cut all these vertical boards right there at the top. So right here where that top of the board is, I'm gonna cut that off, and then I'm gonna run one long board across connecting to this stud and then connecting to the wall over there. And that's gonna open up this bottom piece. I'm also gonna have the track actuator for the bed lift right there on top, so it'll be screwed into that vertical piece right here probably, and have enough travel to lift the bed above. So that's what I have to think about. It's, you know, there's multiple things that are going on that all need to fit together, and there has to be enough of support to hold the weight of the whole bed. I got this piece now that's gonna go over here. Now this piece is gonna get cut off over here. I just wanted to use it as kind of support. Once I mount this one, I'll chop this one off. Alright, that's looking better. Now I'm gonna use that stud in the back as the guide to cut this guy off. There we go. Well, look at how close this is. This is so close, but it can't get in. It won't work. I need to cut this off. Okay, so I ended up removing the whole piece. I couldn't cut it, only that. My blade is not sharp enough. So I'm gonna end up adding a strip here so the wall has something to screw into for the bathroom. But now this is removed. I probably need to add a screw right there. But for now, I'm gonna test to see if I can get my water tank in.
like this. Ooh. It's gonna be tight.
There we go. Okay. The outlet of the water tank is actually on the side here. Later on, to hold the bed, because the bed frame is gonna come down, I can just add a piece of wood here, and then the bed would like sit on it. I'll screw it into the wall, final wall, and if we ever need to take the water tank out, it's gonna be easy to unscrew and remove this one stud that's here, that's supporting the bed. Easy to remove that and then take out the tank. Let me give you the progress update. I've added some L brackets here and there just to help with the weight, because I'm gonna have the water heater is gonna be sitting on top of this. I've added this stud here, so I have this wall has something to screw into, and then I worked on some more over here studs for the shower area. This is where I cut that piece off for the water tank so it can get in. And I've added this stud. I have 24 inches distance between these two studs. That's going to be the door for the bathroom. That's the same distance as this, I believe. I did this cross piece for the door. It's 80 inches from the floor, from the subfloor. This basically concludes the framing portion mostly. I'm gonna have a separate video for how I framed the bunk beds, and a separate video for raising the floor in the bathroom so I can run the plumbing there. But the rest of it is mostly done. Probably gonna need to add a back plate here for the shower head or something. But all generally the framing is done. But I just wanted to walk around, show you what I've done. In summary, I'm using 2x3s with mostly pocket holes with a crack jig, 3-inch construction screws. Got the corners here, they're curved. I cut that from like 2x4s so I can follow the curvature, so I have something to screw the final walls into up there. I'm gonna have a separate video for doing these walls here that are gonna be 3/4 inch plywood for the pantry. I'm gonna have a separate video for that because I'm not framing those. Okay, let me know what you guys think.